grievance handling in Nigeria. And we have the honor of being, the session being led by Barrister Nwosu, who is the commissioner for, if I'm right, Anambra, is it? Yes. All right, okay. Yes, and I'm going to try and invite him to take it from here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Chief Commissioner, Public Complaints Commission. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Chief Commissioner, Public Complaints Commission, Nigeria. The Nigerian way they say all protocols observed. We are in the last session of today's program. After the break, I am going to share the function starting from now. My name has been mentioned by the Prof. I am still Prince Samben Nwosu, Federal Commissioner, Public Complaints Commission for Anambra State. I'm going to drive this vehicle from now till you remove the tires and it will stop moving.
Check one.
And I believe that as people are coming and as lecturers are coming, we are going to call it, we'll be brief with what we are going to do today, summarize it more so that people can have time for other things we have today so we can meet up with all of that. I'm going to start with the new speaker for the next program or topic we have for today. The topic we have for today now is when public officials are aggrieved, reflections on options, problems, and prospects when they are aggrieved. So I'm going to call on the resource person who is coming to take over and share some ideas with us. The person I'm going to call has a BSc in Agric from the University of Ile-Ife in 1974 and a PhD in ecophysiology from the University of British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada in 1980. An academic and scientist turned civil servant, he had a unique and distinguished career that took him to the peak of 3 remarkable bureaucratic heights. In the academics, he rose from graduate assistant to senior lecturer and later permanent secretary of the Federal Ministry of Education, and therefore the highest bureaucratic in the education sector in Nigeria. As an environmental scientist, he rose from assistant director to serve as Director General of Federal Environmental Protection Agency, FEPA. As a civil servant, he was Director of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, SGF, Pioneer Director General of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms, BPSR, and Permanent Secretary in many key ministries, including Culture and Tourism, Interior, and the Federal Capital Territory Administration, where he retired in 2010. Now in retirement, the same person is the chairman and CEO at GSDI, Governance and Sustainable Development Initiative Limited. He is an officer of the law, that's OON, officer of the Order of the Niger. I am calling on Goke Adegoroye, PhD, OON, to come up and take over the microphone and continue to hold us with his lecture. Put your hands together for him, please. Put your hands together for him, please. You're welcome, sir.
I see that previous chairman used to have chair here. Is this going to be projected? I suppose we have it there. I've given them the slide so they can project, at least we can follow. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The topic is when public officials are aggrieved. Reflections on options, problems, and prospects. The Ombudsman, by his definition as we've been told, is described as an appointee of government or the legislature charged with addressing complaints of maladministration or violation of rights. Addressing grievances of public officials, I think you should make it page by page so that we can, they can see it boldly. Okay? Are you okay with that? Okay. Okay. Addressing the grievances of public officials have not been the exclusive preserve of the office of the Ombudsman. This is partly because the aggrieved public officials are always eager to attach themselves to any avenue that will resolve their grievances on time. And also, largely because certain grievances are indeed above the capacity of any national ombudsman to tackle. The conduct of public officials is guided by certain globally cherished public service values based on reciprocal expectations of their employers, that is the government, and the public on one hand, and the public officials themselves on the other hand. The public service values, expectations of government and the public, stipulates that we, as public servants, we must demonstrate democratic values, that is, helping our ministers and political heads to, under the law, serve the public interest. That we must exhibit professional values, serve with competence, excellence, efficiency, and objectivity, and ethical values, uphold at all times the public trust and be responsive to the society and people values, that is, demonstrate respect and fairness and courtesy in dealing with the public and even with fellow public servants. Reciprocally, as public servants, what we expect from our employers are working environment that will engender confidence and enable us to be able to put in our best promptly and cheerfully. Job deployment that will enable the system to get the best out of us. Career development or progression that is motivating and inspiring. And remuneration, salary and other benefits in kind that are adequate in terms of ensuring that public servants do not live below the level of cultural human dignity. I call it cultural human dignity because that you should have a Prado Jeep is not one of the expectations. But the expectation is that you should not live under the bridge. So we must also be able to give you something. Now we go to the grievances. These expectations, which I've highlighted there, which we expect from our employer, some of which are spelled out in the appointment letters of public officials, with others being outlined in public service codes like the condition of service, public service rules, financial regulations, as well as periodic circulars that are issued by the establishment department, constitute in essence the rights of public officials. Accordingly, grievances of public officials are in terms of fairness in the administration of those expectations. Expectations of their grievances is to ensure that they are not denied the benefits that have of right been extended to their colleagues, whether in relation to provision of working tools. You give some computer to work and you don't give another one the computer and you expect it to perform the same way. Favorable job deployment, career progression, especially with regard to training and promotion. You allow some people to go for training, you don't allow some other people, or you promote and you don't allow somebody else who's also equally doing well to be promoted. And of course, remuneration and disbursement of other benefits like housing, vehicles, as well as security of tenure as career public servants. The type of grievances arising from the expectation that I've listed above constitute what I will categorize as management-induced grievances, because they are the result of discretionary application of the rules, guidelines, and processes. And the avenues to seek redress are as outlined in our public service rules. Especially for those of us who are Nigerians, I listed the rules there. And grievances from such avenues or channels are individualistic because they affect you as an individual in their effect, and they are not really difficult to redress when they are brought to the attention of higher authorities. If your direct supervisory officer, does not do the right thing, you can report to director or report to the PAMSEC, and on and on. And then higher authorities or special organs of government, depending on which one is appropriate, like the governing board of the respective agencies, like the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, like also the Federal Civil Service Commission, and of course, our own Public Complaints Commission, which has been established to handle such cases in Nigeria. And I try to give example of some of those ones now. And from what I've seen in the catalog, the annual report of the Public Complaints Commission, there are not really many of these ones that I'm citing here in their own. Regularization irregularity. For those of you who are Nigerians, you understand what I mean. Where the civil service rule prescribing that in regularizing officer into the mainstream civil service, their seniority placement shall not put those who are on ground at any disadvantage. Based on the career progression eligibility of 3 years between grade level, officer entry grade level 8 to chief, which is level 14, and 4 years between 14 and 17, the Federal Civil Service guidelines stipulate a minimum of 27 years post-cognate experience for somebody to rise to the position of director in the mainstream civil service. Similarly, the civil service rules prescribe that in regularizing officers transferred into the mainstream, whether from outside or from wherever, civil service, their seniority placement shall not put those who they meet on ground at any disadvantage. But contrary to these guidelines, the service was made to witness, from my own study, between 2001 and 2008, in regularizing officers of defunct agencies who were transferred into the mainstream civil service, some bizarre regularization and proper placement. A daring case was in the particular agency where an officer was regularized with a seniority advantage of nearly 10 years above his colleagues. When petitions were written by those colleagues, what the Civil Service Commission did was to rule that every officer whose year of graduation predates that of the favored officer should be advanced to the grade of director. While some peace was restored, there were other challenges because you then have some multiple directors in the department. In fact, there was one absurdity where an officer on grade level 14, who in an earlier promotion exercise was not found suitable for advancement to the position of assistant director, but by this new fiat of the Civil Service Commission, because he graduated before the favored candidate, was now made a director, senior to his own reporting officer, a deputy director. You can imagine how that would be in a department. Then, succession irregularity, where an officer next in line was bypassed without any just cause for an officer that is below. I'm sure many of you will have seen some of these cases. He was junior to me, and suddenly they now make him now the acting, okay? And then there's another one, which I treated myself, a superseding induced grievance arising from distortion of the legal position on the CEO between a full-time commissioner and part-time commissioner. For those who are Nigerians, the example I'm giving here is of the then Refugee Commission. There was a time, by the law of the Refugee Commission, the commissioner is the full-time chief executive officer, and the chairman is part-time. But something happened during the period of Abacha. They just issued to the chairman to be chief executive officer, and the commissioner was serving under. And then we were there. I was working with the SJ. We tried to resolve it. But what we just did was that we just allowed it to reign, and then when the tenure lapsed, the thing was now corrected. Then there is one which I'm also talking about, the violation of rights of certain sitting tenants on the acquisition of federal houses. Maybe some of you will know this. What happened was during the time of the sale of government houses to officers, for those who are not Nigerians, there was a time when government found, as a result of our reforms, that too much money was being spent in maintaining houses, and it became a racket. First, it was that, you move to a house today, you go and say that the house is in like a pig's house, and then you make a claim you need 10 million to fix it. But people collect the money, they really don't fix it. Okay? Tomorrow when you are moved to another place, another person takes the house, he also makes another claim. So government now said, okay, maybe we better just sell these houses. And what you people found is that the houses that were not really taken care of, when they were sold, all of them were all changed, and they are now looking fine in Abuja. Whereas when we were living there, nobody was taking care of those houses. But there was this particular case where two permanent secretaries, because they were treated as political office holders, and they were made to pay. So their own houses were bidded for, they were made to pay, and they didn't pay in time. And so the houses were taken away from them. So they got angry, they couldn't get any answer, they went to court. Because they went to court, the then Minister El-Rufai says, well, the president gave me this job to do. If they're taking me to court, I'm not going to handle it. So President Obasanjo now decided to sack the permanent secretaries. Okay, said, go and withdraw from court or we sack you. They refused to withdraw from court, he sacked them. But then they were lucky. It was towards the tenure of the administration, towards the end. When Yaradua came in, they now allowed them to come into the service. Okay? Now, I'm going to talk about grievances arising beyond that level. Grievances arising from new policies of government or actions by government outside the general public service norm. I call them helpless grievances. So, such grievances usually relate to sudden changes in the conditions of service. They are felt by certain target groups. They are not individualistic. They affect more than one person. Seeking redress for them is tedious and sometimes virtually impossible. They are therefore grievances in respect of which public officials usually feel helpless. Because the people most affected are in the top echelon of the public service, the grievances are usually not openly expressed. They just keep quiet and continue to grumble. Unfortunately, the other currents are usually so strong as to generate impacts that cut across generations. In Nigeria, example of new policies and actions of government outside the general public service norms that have generated grievances among public officials are, I list them here, the 1975 nationwide purge of the civil service, the 1988 Public Service Reform Decree 43 of 1988, the 2009 tenure policy, the 2016 suspension of the tenure policy, unusual appointment into public service cadre, permanent secretary cadre, and extension of tenure, the things that happened recently, which some of you read in the papers. The first two policies happened under the military. In the 1975 purge, public servants came home from work, sitting in their living rooms and watching televisions, just started hearing their names and the names of their colleagues being announced as having been retired or dismissed from service. There were no queries to them, and the affected officers were not given any opportunity to defend themselves. In one fell swoop, the cream of the Nigerian civil service was literally decapitated. The best of our earlier top civil servants trained in the British civil service tradition, and with experience straddling the last years of the British rule and the early years of our independence, were removed from the service. People like Asiodu, which you all heard about. Asiodu was removed from the service at age 41. Majority of them, in terms of age, were in their early 40s. Then the 1988 reforms. So the question I'm saying here is this: where is the role of the Public Complaints Commission here? No, nowhere. There's nobody to report to, except to God. The 1988 reform politicized the appointment at higher level of the civil service. The title permanent secretary was changed to Director General, and the accounting officer status were removed and given to their ministers. And the appointees were made to leave office with the administration that appointed them. Some seasoned permanent secretary who didn't like it just decided to leave the service that year. One of them is Mrs. Francesca Emmanuel, the first female permanent secretary. She's now the president of our association. The 2009 policy, this one I am involved. I was the architect. This one was a well thought out policy. It was meant to address a very glaring problem of the federal civil service. Before it was put into policy, a survey of the management level, grade level officers at directorate level to permanent secretary showed that assistant directors and deputy directors were retiring ahead of their directors and permanent secretaries. The assistant directors were older than the PAMSECs and the directors. So this has serious implications for human resources management. Because if you think you are sending your assistant directors for training in England in the hope that in 2 years' time they will be director, usually they came back and 2 months later, they are finding that they needed to retire from service. So, and it was also now affecting morale. Additionally, there was also the quality challenge at those grade levels. Because many of those people were actually occupying directors level. They are not really, some of them were not as good as their assistant directors, and some of you know. And people started feeling that why should some people just be the ones enjoying while we're the ones doing the work? So we therefore had a twin crisis of succession and quality plaguing the service at the same time. So the true problems emanated from the bastardization of the civil service guidelines, which delegated those responsibilities between 1993 and 2002 to ministries, departments, and agencies. And because it was delegated, we now found out that the civil service was being overloaded at higher grade levels through transfers and then absorptions. And then through patronage-induced advantage placement. If you know somebody in the Civil Service Commission, they can easily, make you senior with about 5 years or 10 years or something like that. And then absorption of less qualified aides of political office holders. Somebody comes in as minister, he brings somebody as his aide, and then when he's leaving, he leaves the person, and the person now is transferred into the mainstream civil service. And next thing you know, he's already director, and before you know it, he's even PAMSEC. And you can tell some of these ones that you know yourself. So, based on the civil service guideline, which I told you before, you are supposed to spend minimum of 27 years before you became director. And because our condition of service says that you will retire when you turn 60, or when you have spent 35 years in service, it means if 27 years has already been spent by the time you become director, you have only 8 years. So that is how we came about the 8-year tenure of service. But as it turned out, we had on ground some people who were permanent secretary for 15 years. And we had some people who were directors for 22 years. And when you found out they graduated from university, and 3 years later, somebody just appointed them director, and he's in the system. So that is why we did that. But when we did that also, and the then president approved it, that's the President Yaradua, he also made it to be effective immediately with only 4 months' notice to those affected. That created another problem. Because majority of civil servants, especially those in the immediate line of successions, those ones applauded the policy. But then, those who were affected didn't like the policy because they were not due for retirement yet and they were not looking for it. And as I say here, there are grievances of mystery today, and I say some broken hearts never mend. And then now, while the thing cleared the way and many people were able to become director and permanent secretary. There were some states where their permanent secretary were just there for long. So even no matter how bright, you will never become if you are from those states. While that one was going on, we now found again in 2016, the policy was suspended. Perhaps those people who are aggrieved now say that it should not be suspended. And incidentally, those who are now directors were those who benefited from removing those people. And they are the ones now staying there who are not going. And those who are next in line are grumbling again. Some other grievances that are going on. And so, the suspension has brought to the fore a new wave of grievance by the officers that are in line to benefit from the thing. And I'll say that the helpless grievances, the list continues with new intrusions, because in addition, some of you read in newspapers in the last 2-3 weeks, you will have seen the things that I put out, that Guardian carried, Daily Trust carried, Punch carried, with regards to some of those issues, including the extension of certain officers, which you will find. You can still Google. If you Google my name and put those things, you will see there. So, but the key thing here is why those things were brought out by me and they were in the papers. Even today, one paper carried another statement that I made. It is instructive to know that many civil servants who call to express their support for the views that I expressed and to thank me for championing what they believe is in the best interest of the service, nonetheless expressed their frustration on the helplessness of their position to say anything about the issues. They say, sorry, sir, we cannot talk. So, you are those of you who are retired, the ones who can talk for us. Indeed, some broken hearts never mend. Because they cannot talk, you can imagine the kind of morale that they are carrying working in the system. So the system is not getting the best out of them, the system is getting the worst out of them, and yet they continue to earn their salary. So I list here avenues to seek redress. That's finally, when issues like this happen, no matter how small, you complain to your director, senior management meeting of the respective MDAs can talk about it. If it's in an agency that has board, the governing board can look into it. If it is higher than that, the office of the head of the civil service, okay, can look into it. And then office of the secretary to the government of the federation, especially if it is for agencies and so on. And of course, the Public Complaints Commission. In Nigeria, you remember this radio program that we have, the Brekete family, whereby some people go there and they talk about their problem. Early in the morning, it's talking, I'm sure some of you have heard about Brekete family, okay? And of course, people like us who once in a while make statements to at least give some kind of backbone to those who are in the service. And like you heard this morning from Senator Aki Elure, the relevant committees of the legislation in the House of Rep and the Senate are also some of the pressure groups that can help. And in the last resort, the court of law. Thank you.
Please, another round of applause for the presenter, the teacher, the problem solver, Goke Adegoroye. He has given us, they say, problems identified is problems solved. We thank you so much. I'm not going to call for questions because I imagine your presentation with that of a similar one, which after that, I will ask people who want to ask questions to come up with their questions so you can give us a suggested solution to that same problems. I am going to call on another resource person here, this time around on a different topic, but very close to what you just dropped now. The person I am calling on will speak on complaints handling in public service delivery in Nigeria, assessing the role and the effectiveness of Servicom. The person I'm going to call is no other person than a graduate of University of Calabar with a BA honors in English and Literary Studies, Masters of Administration, University of Abuja in Literature, Diploma Institute of Consulting, UK, CMD certified trainer. She's a seasoned administrator in the Federal Civil Service. An ISO certified Service Delivery Office of Nigeria, a certified officer customer training, an experienced and seasoned mediator, a woman of her charge and status to the rank of a mother and a grandmother, mother of 4, grandmother of 4. That's, I call it 4 plus 4. It's an ambassador of justice of peace. I am calling on the national coordinator and the CEO of Savicom Presidency, Lady Nenna Akaje Mili. Put your hands together as she moved on to take over the stage. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to also be on the side of the already established protocol and to also say that my name is Nena Kajemele. I bring you greetings from the management and staff of the Savicom office in the presidency. We are a project office under the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. And I'm here to present the paper, The Role of Savicom in Handling Public Complaints in Service Delivery Processes and Systems in the Ministries, Departments, and Agencies. I'd like to make a statement that was recently made. And according to the Presidential Committee on the Review of Reform Processes, okay, yes, thank you. This one. And he said, there's no functioning public service in Nigeria. We are operating a patronage system that destroys merit. How true is this? Okay. And so this tells us that there's something wrong with our service delivery process, obviously. And so one of the key reasons why Savicom, Service Delivery Office, was established, to ensure that we reverse the trend. And going closely by that, most public services have no competition, the nature of our services. And I'll give a few examples. If I'd like to get my international passport, it's just the immigration office I must go to. CBN is in charge of minting our money. We work with the mint. We also have the police. We have customs. Complete monopoly. And so we need to open up these processes and systems and ensure that indeed services serve the people. And so this is evident in the number of complaints. And so because of the monopoly of the nature of these services, a lot of service providers in the MDAs think when they serve us, they're doing us a favor to the service takers. Rather, government has employed them, appointed service providers in the different ministries, departments, and agencies to ensure that they deliver quality services that touch the lives of the people. What do we have? And to show us in Nigeria that this objective and this aim of government is not being achieved, it's evident in the number of complaints that we receive from ministries, departments, and agencies, especially service windows that have high customer interface. And I'll have a list of examples that I'll be sharing with you. And from my experiences and what Savicom has been processing, we also have data to back up what we have to present here. And so Savicom is at the center receiving a lot of these. People come to us and we have different strategies for engaging and handling some of these complaints. And so why do we go about handling? Why is it even important for us to handle complaints? We handle complaints because from it we have provision of accurate information on the quality of services. When services are failing, you have more people complaining about a particular process. Something is going wrong. That is the indication that in a particular service, in a particular process, in a particular system, something is not working the way it should work, in line with their service promises, commitments, and standards. We also handle complaints to promote relationship between the service provider and the service taker. When we also admit and have room for customers to complain, we allow the service takers to be in control. They are engaged and they are part of the process of telling us what happens in the process, provisions, and delivery. And then we also identify problems for free. An example, if you need to engage a consultant to tell you how well your services are serving the people, you pay through your nose. Consultancy is expensive, is real, serious business. But when citizens or service takers come to us to complain, they are giving us free consultancy. We are the recipients, the consumers of this service, and this is exactly what is not right about this service. And so we should harvest and take advantage. So those are the real reason why we engage and harvest this feedback and this report and then get back to government on how the services are serving the people. And so where do we have prevalence of service failures in service delivery process in Nigeria? The first one is around the hospitals, health. Health. And I have a lot of examples. Taking FCT, for instance. Sometimes people get to the hospital. We have the service charter where we have standards of how people should be served. What do we have? Those promises are kept in the books, in our strategic documents. They are not turned around into reality. They are not used or implemented in the course of serving the people. Example is, on a Saturday, because we have disseminated and they know Servicom phone numbers, they call us as late as 12 midnight, 3 p.m. People are in the hospital. This one happened very recently. Nyanya General Hospital here in the Federal Capital Territory. I'm talking about Nigerians who are resident here and who can identify with this hospital. And I got calls. Servicom, we have been here from 8 a.m. and this is 3:30 p.m. Some of us have not been served. And I asked, what is the reason? They said there is only one doctor on duty on a Saturday in a large hospital of a district. Nyanya is a district, a community in FCT. And so a call through to the health secretariat, the Servicom health secretariat, I got the Servicom desk officer to go to that hospital and remove the bottleneck. And so we got results. I'll take us through the data of what we have been able to do and how we have. The next one is pension. Retirees are not paid their benefits as at when I'm sure a lot of us can identify. If you open the pages of the newspaper, we would identify the system and the process is not working as well as it should. Looking at the contributory pension and PTAD, the transition, we need to look at those. We have series of complaints. People retire 2 years, 3 years, they are not paid. And so you have a queue of retirees, officers, seeking help from Servicom. And we do intervene, engage the point where the services are failed, and we record results. Administrative injustice, we relate with PCC. And it's in this partnership that we also invited them to the Human Rights Radio. And in discussing how to take this forward, we're able to also work with them to secure a whole day, every Wednesday, the future PCC, and ensure that Nigerians are better engaged on issues of complaints and administrative injustice. And I want to commend them using this opportunity because a lot of people have gotten justice as a result of their intervention. And so when we have these cases of complaints, we refer to PCC. And so please keep up the good job. And today is evidence of what they are doing in the lives of Nigerians. Bringing the matter and opening up the processes so that more lives, more complaints can be redressed. Now the biggest one, the police. It comes in all shapes and sizes. I'm sure it doesn't only we have a lot more work to do here. Support and more work is needed to address concerns around here, especially level of responding to, even when the complaints are sent. Even acknowledgement sometimes would take years on end or weeks on end. A lot of work needs to be done here, but we are not relenting because we want to open up that system and streamline. Then around the airport, issues, incidences of flight delays. We have that, and we have also engaged, we are working with them, with NCAA to develop the customer rights. And so we can begin to activate and make our claims so that we can reduce level of complaints and also better satisfy customers. Power, this is another big one. And even now that we have partially privatized it, there are still issues of estimated bills, and then we need to work around this. And then road users, we have huge complaints around this. Working with road safety and also working with Federal Ministry of Works. And so the role of Servicom in handling this, what do we do when we get such complaints from these organizations and these sectors? What we do is, first, we let people know that we are not the service window where these services have failed. If you have a service failure experience at the airport, that did not happen in Servicom office. So what we do essentially is to engage and facilitate the process of redressal and compensation where needed. So we facilitate engagement and calling the attention of the MDA, the organization, to quickly attend to customers and remedy the situation. And how do we do that? So when we get complaints, written complaint, we acknowledge receipt and then forward it to officers in the different ministries, departments, and agencies. We have presence in every ministry, department, and agency. We have Servicom presence. And so the head of that presence is known as the nodal officer. And that's the strategy. So when we receive this complaint from the center, we engage, we send it straight to them. And then we'll have also trained them on how to process these complaints and achieve timely redressal. And so the nodal officer is expected to respond to that complaint within 10 working days. Capacity has been built and they have been trained on how to work this step by step and achieve this. And we start the process of timing and measuring the timelines as soon as we have an acknowledgement that that complaint has been received at the point where it's sent. And then the nodal officer is expected to report progress, to investigate, engage with a particular department that is in charge of that particular service, process it, and then report progress within 15 working days. They report to the complainant as well as us, and so we track progress. We have what we call the complaint feedback slip. This helps us, we ask them to fill this, and it helps us to track progress of all complaints where we have all of these details listed. And it helps us to think which is appropriate, and then we follow it up and track progress. And so we do not just receive complaint and send to them and then go to sleep. We track it from stage to stage until we have final redressal. Now, we also have room for remarks. There are some cases, and I'll give an example of customs, where we send complaints and we get no response. What we do, we have a live example of what a case we're handling. But taking it forward, we have also made advocacy visits to the chief executive and the management of customs to actually let them understand the benefits they start to reap when they timely redress complaints and issues around service failure. This is what I just said, the escalation framework for handling complaints. Sometimes complaints can come from the complainants and through the service window, through the agency supervising the service window, and then it will come to the ministry, and then they will move it to Servicom. And it can also be the other way around. And so whichever way it comes, we follow it up and we track it and we redress it completely. We have enabled multiple channels for receiving complaints. It can be written, it can be through the social media, it can also be through our Twitter handle, Facebook, through phone calls, and then through MDAs. It can also be one-on-one visits to our office, multiple channels. We want to harvest as much as possible, and that's why we have deployed multiple channels for dealing with complaints. That way, Nigerians are speaking out when they are not served right. That is So what have we achieved so far and the value we have added to the process? Now, looking at the first 2 quarters of 2019, we can see here complaints received and the data we have to match all the complaints. Looking at the largest one, which is NUC, from the universities, issue of transcript, delays around processes and systems in the universities. That is the highest from first quarter of year 2019 and the second quarter as well. Then the lowest is Lottery Commission to date. And we have our data to support all of this. What are we doing? We want to be able to put out to the public and let them know exactly those who are working and those who are very sensitive to the plight of citizens. We have MDAs with 5 complaints or less, and they are listed. If we look at this, some of them are MDAs, ministries, organizations with less customer-facing interface. Lately, we have had complaints from about 2-3 schools. Looking at WAEC, we intervened, and the results were released. The particular paper that had issue is still being investigated, but the rest of the papers were released so that the students can move forward and process, and some of them are already in the university. Otherwise, that would have waited and they would have missed some of their admission process. And so that is what we stand to get when we timely intervene. We have an active relationship with JAMB as well. So JAMB has been very, very responsive. We also want to commend the effort of NDIC, NHI. NHIS has been an issue, but they have a new head. NHIS is the health scheme, National Health Insurance Scheme of Nigeria. They have also cases of service failures and citizens not being treated right in the different hospitals. That is ongoing. They have a new head now, and we're engaging them so that we can have all those bottlenecks and all those slow processes refined and then transformed to service improvement. Sorry. What happened? The light went off. So using my backup, I want to quickly go to the benefits of handling complaints. Benefits. But before then, alarming number of unresolved complaints. I want to make a point of this. There are some organizations that we send complaints to or people complain to, and they are not responsive. When you are not responsive to your customers, it means that you're insensitive. It means that you're not prepared and you're not ready to serve. And that's the message we're letting out. If we quickly, no system is perfect. And so we want people to own, organizations should own their complaints, quickly redress it, and then come forward and then also close the loop. When you close the loop, trust is sustained. But when you don't, people lose confidence in whatever beautiful stories you have to tell them about your office. And so handling complaints and ensuring that you close the loop of fully redressing such consent would also give us very positive image, and we stand to reap a lot of benefits from this. So for those who do not resolve or attend to complaints, this is the time to change. And if we resolve complaints very quickly, the ombudsman, the PCC, will have little or no cases to handle. But when we do not resolve complaints and people are frustrated, then they run to the ombudsman. And when it's not also quickly resolved there, as our earlier presenter, our very own has said, we only look up to God. That shouldn't be the situation. And so the ombudsman is here to help save us. But first, people must speak out. How do you speak out? Complain. And then when they complain, MDA's organization should be very, very responsive to engage and make a difference. If they don't, then we are going to load PCC with a lot of cases. And so we need to help and work towards. So what are the benefits? It improves the trust of people in government and provides avenue for people to be heard and participate in issue of governance. And then it serves as avenue for service improvement. There's a feedback platform, and then this platform must also be seen to be very, very responsive and to touch the lives of people by their intervention. Enhance citizen connectedness. When people complain to organizations, government organizations, and they don't respond, it means that there's disconnectedness. And so when we respond and close the loop, we are helping build trust and confidence in government. And then sustain customer satisfaction, engagement in service delivery process. We now have the priorities. In a particular department, you know exactly what they want. Even in a hospital, you can actually dictate that by the level of the concerns that they show from their complaints. We have an example here. A woman, a widow who lost her husband for years, 2014, had been chasing the benefit. And she never got this. And so she wrote to Servicom. Servicom intervened. And then lo and behold, she had her check. I had asked that they should put this check up. She wrote to Servicom, commending and appreciating Servicom. And then this took less than 3 months. And this is a case she had been pursuing. This happened just 2 weeks ago. And she had been on this matter since 2014. So we're saying in all here that essentially complaints handling is truly an essential part of doing government business. And then if we do that, we have valuable customer insight, and it also helps organizations to make progress and improve on all their processes and systems. And this will lead to reduced costs, increased profitability, increased trust, and it's all about restoring trust and confidence in government and giving less work to PCC, the ombudsman. When we serve the people right and timely redress their concerns, the ombudsman will have less to do. On this note, I want to thank you and to state that Servicom is a critical partner in ensuring that we get the people served right. Thank you very much for your attention.
I think another round of applause we do for Lady Nena Akajemeli. She has taken us round on the topic. I am still looking at the same, moving on the same altitude. I want to bring or call up the chief complaint receiver of Nigeria to come and take us on the topic that says, towards effective handling of citizen grievances in Nigeria, reflections. The other one says, reflections on options, problems and prospects. That's by OON Hoda. This one is reflections on lessons of experience. Reflections on lessons of experience. I'm calling on a lawyer that practiced, former civil servant to the rank of permanent secretary, a lawmaker in the Green Chamber of Nigeria, a former legislative advisor to the former speaker, Yakubu Dogara, a Christian and a family man. I am calling on the Honorable Chief Public Complaints Commissioner of Nigeria, Honorable Chile Wanga Ebawa, to come up to the stage and give us a way forward to the topic towards effective handling of citizen grievances in Nigeria, reflections on lessons of experience. Welcome, Chief Commissioner of Nigeria, Public Complaints Commission.
Thank you very much. Let me thank the chairman of session, distinguished participants. My paper is a slightly long one, so I'm not going to present it. I'm going to speak to it. And it will be available online. There's no PowerPoint presentation. The topic has been mentioned out towards effective handling of grievances in Nigeria, reflections on lessons of experience. It's a topic that has been spoken on before. Same concepts, different jurisdictions, different social settings. My colleagues from other countries have spoken on this topic as it relates to their countries, and we've already had experience. And I think coming at this point, I do not have the burden of either defining what ombudsman is or where it started and all that. So I just go into the Nigerian experience. And I would like to start from legal framework, which is my starting point. Because for any ombudsman institution to be effective, there must be an effective legal framework that governs it. In the case of Nigeria, the first point to make is that the Nigerian Ombudsman is a constitutional institution. It is provided for in section 315 of section 5B of the Constitution of Nigeria. So it is a product of the Constitution backed up with an act of the National Assembly that defines the details of its operations. Now, with respect to the jurisdiction that the Nigerian Ombudsman has, with respect to sectors, the Ombudsman of Nigeria has jurisdiction over both the public and the private sector. It is a peculiar one because in some jurisdictions, mostly, it is only public sector jurisdiction. But in Nigeria, the Ombudsman has jurisdiction over the public sector, all federal government agencies, all state government agencies, all local government agencies, and then the private sector, all companies registered under the Companies and Allied Matters Act, or those companies operating subject to the provisions of that act. Now, with respect to with respect to persons, the Nigerian jurisdiction, Ombudsman has jurisdiction over citizens of Nigeria as well as citizens of all other nations that are resident in Nigeria. So these are the categories of people that can either complain or be complained against. Now, what also is important is about the independence of the ombudsman. Now, an ombudsman cannot operate if he is not independent. Now, under the Nigerian legislation, it clearly provides that in the performance of his duties, the ombudsman is not subject to the control of any person or any authority. So it is left for the ombudsman to operate, because as for the legal framework, he has all the powers to exercise his functions without let or hindrance. Now, the issue of security of tenure is also what enhances independence. Now, all I can say is that so far in the history of the Nigerian Ombudsman, there is no instance of an ombudsman having been removed from office because of the manner he performed his work. So that is all I can say about it. But otherwise, the law provides that the ombudsman can be removed by the National Assembly. By the way, the ombudsman in Nigeria is nominated by the National Assembly, cleared by the National Assembly, appointed by the National Assembly, and inaugurated by the National Assembly. But once inaugurated, the relationship ceases. He oversees every institution, including the National Assembly. So, but I think that it comes under the trace of the occupant of the office, whether he finds it more honorable to perform his duties diligently and without fear or favor, or to seek to perform in such a way that he can have a second term. To my mind, when you are appointed to an office, you should only respect the term that you have been given. If a second one comes, it's a bonus. But the moment you begin to focus on a second term, you are destroying your job, because you begin to compromise to satisfy somebody who the law says you should not satisfy. Now, the other requirement for performance is that of immunity. Now, the Nigerian Ombudsman is immune. He cannot be, prosecuted because he's performing his duty. And this immunity covers the ombudsman himself and all staff of the ombudsman. So he has the right of access also to any person, any property, any location. And under the provisions of the Act, it is a crime for you to object to access that the ombudsman wishes to have to your property. If a staff goes out to inspect your property and you stop him, it's a criminal offense for which you'll be prosecuted and imprisoned or fined or both. It is also, of course, an offense for you to either delay or refuse to respond to the request from the ombudsman. The law provides very clearly that when the ombudsman makes a request to you, you have a duty to respond within 30 days. Now, in the standard operating procedure which we have issued for the Commission, we have tried to further define this period of response, such that once a letter is written to a respondent, if on the 15th day he has not responded, there will be a reminder in writing. If on the 20th day there is still no response, he will be visited personally by the investigation officer. If on the 30th day he has not responded and has not given any reason for not responding, then we can at that point issue a summons without further ado. That has reasonably streamlined the powers that the ombudsman operates with respect to performing his job within the time frames that are expected of him. Now, enforcement powers. Under the Act, the ombudsman enforces his decisions through third parties, not directly. When he makes a determination about what should be done, it is not he who enforces, but the authority that has offended. And for instance, if an agency is the one that has offended, for instance, like unlawfully dismissing an officer, you require that office to reinstate the officer if that is the justice of the case. And where he fails, a report will be made to the supervisory agency. And now there's a clear provision about enforcement of the determinations of the ombudsman. It is mandatory. Now in law, whatever the law says, something shall be done. The word shall means it is not optional. And the Act provides that when an ombudsman makes a determination and requires an agency to take such action, that agency shall take such action. So it means it's mandatory. Now, the other aspect of the legal framework that is important is that of finality of other statutes. There is a common provision in many statutes which says any act performed by an officer under this statute is final. Now, the Act establishing the Ombudsman says anywhere that that provision is made in an act, it ends with that institution, but it is not final to the Ombudsman. So any act done by that agency or that official, in spite of the provision in their own act that it is final, it is not final to the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman had the right to look into such matter, that notwithstanding that provision of the act that it is final. So that provision does not inhibit the work of the Ombudsman. The other provision is that of the security of information or the privilege. All information that arises in the course of the performance of the work of the Ombudsman and the records of proceedings are privileged. The Ombudsman cannot be compelled to disclose his source of information, not even by the court. So that means that the Ombudsman is a veritable institution for, whistleblowing. It means when you disclose something to the Ombudsman, he can act on it without disclosing your identity. And that is further enforced by the fact that the Ombudsman is not bound to wait for a report. If the Ombudsman of his own discovers a wrongdoing in society, he can commence the investigation without a report from anybody. For instance, if an Ombudsman, a staff of the commission resides in a particular area and he finds something going wrong, he can of himself bring the matter to the office and commence investigation on that matter, and the matter will be dealt with. I had an experience. A couple of my friends reported to me that a certain hotel in town was playing a trick on customers. They had some lighting points at their reception. So when you came there to pay for the hotel, you will see light. But the moment you went to the room, there will be no light. And they will tell you where it will come on. And then it never got to come on. So I went incognito one evening and booked in the hotel. And they told me, well, there's no problem. When I got in, I said, can you put on the light so that I can see whether the TV and the thing? Say, no problem when I go down. 5 minutes after, no light. I came down and said, I require that there should be light in this hotel. And they said, well, they have gone to buy diesel. I waited for 10 minutes, no light. I came down and said, I want to see your manager. The manager came and said, sorry, there's a minor problem with the generator, just trying to fix it. So I said at this point, I'm not going to stay in a hotel that is fixing generators because I have my money back. And they say, well, because you paid through ATM, we don't have cash for you. But strangely, they didn't bother to tell me how they were going to refund my money. So, of course, I got back to the office and I notified the director of private sector investigation. And he summoned them. He wrote to them. First, when the letter was brought, they rejected the letter. And so we issued a summons with police, accompaniment. And they got the letter and they came. They had no defense, of course. They apologized that they had just taken over the management of the hotel and they tried to make it better. So we said, well, for that reason, only two things for now. You will write a formal apology to the PCC and you will refund the money of this customer who was not accommodated. The following day, they went and brought back the money. But of course, because I registered with the pseudonym, they issued a check which couldn't be cashed. So when they brought it, I said, well, this name was only for you. It's not the real name. Go and bring the check in the real name. And they went back and did it. So they wrote that letter of apology, and the manager came and begged and said, when we make it better, if we have time, we'll require you to come and inspect to confirm that we have improved the system. So things like that can happen. The ombudsman can initiate investigation on his own without somebody from externally bringing a complaint. Now, what is the structure that enhances the performance of the Nigerian ombudsman? We are a vast country with a huge population and, huge landmass. So we have a federal structure for the ombudsman. We have the headquarters of the ombudsman where the chief ombudsman resides. And then we have federal commissioners in all the 36 states and the FCT. So there's a total of 37 federal commissioners who are the ombudsmen in charge of the states. And to further get closer to the ordinary citizen, we have established over 200 offices in local governments. Now, these offices are established in a local government that oversees the local government surrounding it. We have two options, either to proceed to establish more local government offices, because for the benefit of those who are not Nigerians, we have 774 local governments in Nigeria. So 200 is just a drop in the ocean. But we are thinking more in this age of an e-system. So we've been working harder to introduce an e-reporting system where a citizen lies on his bed in the room and makes a report online and is able to track this report until it is resolved. The plan is already completed. All that is being awaited is the provision of funds for the implementation. Now, of course, the other provision of the law is the power to compel response and attendance. Like I said, the ombudsman has the power to summon. And the power to summon means that when you reject, you can then be arrested. So the ombudsman can request the police to arrest a person who has failed to respond to his summons to appear. Now, that structure helps us to improve the way that we work. The other requirement for the good performance of any ombudsman office, like my other colleagues who have spoken about, is the staffing function. We have a staff complement of 2,460 staff spread all over the Federation. Now, but the number of staff alone is not sufficient. The quality of staff is important, because you can have huge numbers without quality and it ends up in the same place. So we have quality staff, but because investigation is a dynamic, concept, it means that staff need to be constantly trained and retrained to be able to meet the changing situations with respect to investigations. And that is an area in which I wouldn't give ourselves a pass mark. Our training schemes have been on the low side because, of course, of our budgets. But it's an area in which we are trying to emphasize. So there must be sufficient capacity development for staff if the ombudsman seeks to be successful. The other requirement is working tools. As a matter of fact, in this age, for you to have an effective investigation officer, every investigation officer should have a computer. That is the barest minimum. Because he needs to prepare his reports. As he goes around, he's getting pictures of the sites he's inspecting, he's making reports, and the only way you can have this report submitted timelessly is that he has a computer from which he can work while even on the field and just submit a report or even send them online for production before he gets back to the office. That has not been achieved. It's a weak area which we are looking for. Other issue, having spoken about the legal framework, the organizational structure, the staffing function, is of course the personality traits of the ombudsman. This has been discussed here over and again. An ombudsman needs courage. He needs to be a model in conducting his business in accordance with the law and the expectations of the law. The ombudsman also needs to value effective performance over security of tenure. If you focus too much on security of tenure, you won't do your job, because you're always looking over your shoulder. Are they going to sack me? And I think every day you do your job, you should thank God for it and say this will be the last day. If you are thinking along those lines, then you don't bother about what people are thinking. You just do your job. And I think that's the best approach. I don't go to office and close and think that I must come back the following day. If they decide that, well, I'm not performing as they desire and they want me to go, so be it. And I always tell my staff, look, I wasn't born here. Some of you have been here for 30 years before I came. I wasn't born here. I wouldn't die here. So you must be determined to do your work for that period that you have, not the one that you don't have. You have a first tenure. You are trying to please people and you're not doing the job so that you can get another tenure. Who tells you that tenure will come? Well, it's like the farmers and politicians, they don't ever die. They say this season I will farm in this place, next season I will farm in that land. So they don't ever die. Politicians too say, well, I'm going to contest for House of Reps. In the next 4 years I'll contest for Senate. Next one I'll contest for governorship. They don't die at all. But the end result is that you may die before the other one comes. So I think it's important for us, do the job while you have the time and you have the opportunity. Leave the rest to God. If it is we that you'll be there, you'll be there. Otherwise, whatever human effort you make, it will be in vain. And, it will be wasted. Now, the other issue is perceptions. First of all, what is the public's perception? The Nigerian public thinks that the ombudsman can answer all questions. As a matter of fact, if the wife doesn't cook good soup, the ombudsman should bring the wife to book. Why didn't she cook good soup? So all forms of complaints are brought. And it's for you to tell them, please, this is how far we can go. And in this area, we don't interfere. But as for the public, they think ombudsman is the name applies in Nigeria, public complaint. They think every complaint is your own. So it's for you to tell them, well, some complaints don't belong to me. Now, what is the perception of the other publics? That is, the institutions that you deal with, those who fall under your jurisdiction. First perception is that of antagonism. They think we want to antagonize them. But the fact is that you are actually helping them to do their jobs. They are supposed to render good quality service. Just like the executive secretary of the Servicom said, it's just assisting you do what you're supposed to do without even assistance. And I think for agencies that have come to realize that the ombudsman is there to assist them and not to antagonize them, they are doing well. But for those who think you shouldn't interfere into their work, there is need to tell them that you're not interfering. And what I have tried to do since I assumed office is that we don't take kindly to those who try to be intransigent. And there's nobody that has come before us that we have not summoned. I think the first time we're supposed to invite the National Assembly, one of my staff asked me, do you invite also the National Assembly? And I say, why not? They're part of it. They have finished swearing us in, so their job is done. It's now our turn to do our own job. And of course, we invited the National Assembly. They came, responded, and have complied with our determination. There was a case of a director who was posted to a non-existent office, and her office was allocated to an assistant director, and she had no office. I would say you can't do that. If you don't have an office, she continues to remain in that office until you can provide an office. And the National Assembly reposted her to a more proper place and provided an office for her. So she's a happy lady now. Now, next is limitations. Of course, with respect to perceptions, what you need is advocacy. People need to be told what you can do and what you cannot do. And we have been trying to do that. We've been on radios. Every Monday, I am on FRC and I broadcast nationwide. Every Wednesday, we're on Human Rights Radio. Every Thursday, we're on Jordan FM. For my officers and commissioners who are in the states with coverage. And also at the state level, commissioners are constantly engaging the public. We have also introduced what we call the town hall meetings. So when we go around, we conduct town halls. And it doesn't matter who is wrong. I know the other experience I had is that I went to a local government. The local government chairman gave us the venue for the town hall. And the case was brought against him. And we discovered he was wrong, and we told him he was wrong. So we asked him, you have to pay this man his money. And, you know, I mean, somehow he took it in good faith. People thought it was not courteous for somebody who gave you a commendation for you to judge against him. But he was wrong. But of course he came out and said, well, my problem is that unless you can help me through the Bureau for Local Government, they won't give me this money. And I told the commissioner in charge of the state, get to the Bureau for Local Government, let them release the money. And he got there and the Bureau released the money to the local government, and then the person was paid his money. So people need to understand. Now, we have limitations in the Act. First, of course, any matter that is before the court, we cannot handle it. Any matter that is before the National Assembly, we cannot handle it. Any matter that, you know, is before the president, we cannot handle it. Any matter that is more than 12 months old, we cannot handle it. Now, on the issue of 12 months, I want to clarify. There could be a case that is more than 12 months, in fact, 2 or 3 years. The fact is, we determine, is this case alive? How can a 3-year case be alive? A 3-year case is alive where from the date of offense, the complainant has continued to pursue it. Maybe trying to use internal dispute resolution mechanisms to sort it out for 3 years, and it didn't work. And he finally came to the commission. In that case, even though the case is 3 years old, it's still alive. So it's within 12 months as far as we're concerned, because from the day that he decided that I'm not sure I can get justice to the time he reported, it's less than 12 months. So that 3-year case is still alive by our standards. And now there is a provision in the Act which makes it discretionary for the ombudsman to determine whether internal mechanisms have been exhausted. So it's not for you to say, this guy has not complained to us and waited. If, for instance, somebody has been complaining for 2 years, if you cannot come and plead before us that the internal measures are not being exhausted, because justice delayed, they say, is justice denied. Even though a Nigerian jurist brought the other side, he said, hasty justice is also denial of justice. But we try to balance up the situation and see whether there is intention to resolve the problem or not. So those are the areas that we look forward to having law reforms to ensure that the window is open wider for those who are aggrieved citizens who can complain. Thank you very much.
He talked to us on towards effective handling of citizen grievances in Nigeria. The topic that we just discussed now in this session says effective handling of citizen grievances in Nigeria. The 3 different people have spoken. Number 1, or the first person, is the Dr. Goke Adegoroye, OON, who spoke on, he said, when public officials are aggrieved, reflections on options, problems, and prospects. The second person, Lady Nenna Akajemeli, she spoke on complaints handling in public service delivery in Nigeria, assessing the role and the effectiveness of Sabicon. The last but not the least, Chief Chili Wanga Ibawa, spoke on towards effective handling of citizen grievances in Nigeria, reflections on lessons of experience. Question time. Let me collect questions. I'll just give numbers. Dr. Adegoroye, you're already raising your hand. I'm putting you there to answer questions, to bring solution to. Okay, I will take your question. Maybe your question will come last, because when they finish asking questions, all of you will come to answer the questions. Yes, because when the complaint receiver is the one complaining now, I don't know. Please raise your hands. I ignore his own yet. You are number 1. I'll just give you numbers. You are number 1, you are number 2, you are number 3. Any other one? I just have 5 minutes for 3 of you to ask your questions, and then they have 10 minutes for the 3 of them to answer, so we can move, because we have a parallel session. According to Professor Ayeni, he told me that there will be a parallel session so that we can rush this one briefly and then move into the next session. Yes, number 1, please. Okay, have a microphone already.
Okay,
Please, speakers, listen to their questions so you can, if you have something to say on it, go ahead.
What?
An ombudsman, okay, number 4. Ombudsman for Kano State, Nigeria.
Okay, I have 2 questions for the last 2 speakers. The service corps, my question is, I've not heard of sanctions to MDS that refuse to attend to complaints or issues that are brought to their attention. The second one is to the Honorable Chief Public Complaints Commissioner. Is there any insurance cover for the PCC staff? Looking at the fact that they are involved in investigations, and Nigeria now is becoming a country that if you are not careful, you are doing your job, but somebody else may interpret it and may even harm you, and your family will be at loss. No insurance, nothing. I don't know whether there is any insurance cover for them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, number 2.
Yes, thank you. My name is Azuka Ogugwa from ICPC, and my question is directed at Dr. Goke. Sorry, I can't get this on.
Dr. Goke Adegoroye.
Yes, sir. So my question has to do with the public service. In public service, you hear about disciplinary committees, a lot of disciplinary actions being meted, but I don't know of any mechanism for younger officers to escalate issues bothering them to management. I'm talking about these days now, we are doing a lot about gender policy, sexual harassment policy. These are some issues that you find that the management officers have a superior hand over the younger officers. And there is no grievance mechanism. I'm just wondering, what are the avenues? And then in those cases that you said, God will help us. God will intervene and help us. You know, in the civil service, these policies suddenly arise most of the time. I knew people who were suddenly laid off because they had been directors for more than 8 years. And like you said, the beneficiaries are there now. And some of them are like, oh, they were 5 years then. And now they are staying more than 8 years. And they are not going. So those of us that are trying to come up, we are told there is no vacancy at the top. There is no more vacancy for promotion. How do we now protest that we are being stagnated because you pass a promotion exam and you have passed, but you are not promoted because there is no vacancy. And then a director has been there 10, 12 years. And there is no, because the director...
No hopes. God will really help. God will really help us.
No, we need more than God to help us. We need to do something about it.
Dr. Adegoro, you noted it, right? Okay, so there may be fasting and prayer in your own problem. Yes, number 3.
Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
My name is Amarita from the Nigerian Nuclear Regulatory Authority. My question goes to my madam, Mrs. Nena Akajemelu. Sometimes I applied for my transcript from my school. I actually attended 2 schools. So I applied for one transcript in the other school. They charged me like almost 30,000. Then at the end of the day, the people processing it said I have to give them something so that they would tip the other people in order to make it fast. And some of those people, some of them may be here. Then the other school, the same thing happened. The last time I was angry when I get there, I went there, my document had come, and they refused to act on it. My question is, all these trainings that we've been organizing, some of us are the service takers, some of us are service givers. Is it that we are so adamant that we don't want to take the training that we learn? Or is it that because the system is bad, we want to make it worse? I want to really know if the services are not supposed to be rendered. Another question, when I go to the hospital, they will tell me that this is not covered and that is covered. Maybe it's only paracetamol that is covered. And somebody is sick. Then at the end, they will tell me they want to call so that they will get a confirmation. Is it that my name is not on that list? I am a government worker. If there is something that they should do, please, I want to know, because the whole thing is becoming tiring. Thank you.
Thank you. Take the microphone to number 4. Okay.
My name's Ahmed Adoda Dinkwa from Federal Commissioner, Public Complaints Commission, Kano. My question is to the Savicon, from the madam from Savicon office. From what my chief commissioner closed his lecture with on the issue of limitations that are placed on most of the laws establishing organizations, complaints handling organizations. Honestly, you will see it's something that has been giving us a problem, this issue of limitations that are placed on the operations of this complaints handling. My question is, do Savicon also has this problem of limitations? And secondly, do you have powers of prosecuting difficult respondents? Thank you.
Thank you. Take the microphone. I think since there's an issue of God here, Dr. Degoroye, I think you are going to answer first. Please, I want to ignore any other protocol. Just answer first, because we mentioned you mentioned God. They mentioned you mentioned God. Because after your answer, there might be solution to the problem. So,
first, I was going to ask my own question, which is very simple, to the Public Complaints Commissioner, Chief Public Complaints, Chief Ombudsman. You gave us that interesting incident of you going to the hotel.
That's a question. This is number 5th question. Oh. This is number 5th question.
I put my number first.
Yes, so go ahead.
You didn't tell us the sanction. You only ended at the fact that they pay you. And to me, being my years of doing enforcement in environment and of also public service reform, I'm more interested in the sanction. Because I was expecting you to say you closed them down until they had put in those services before they can open.
I think anyway, I heard him. He will answer you well, because anyway, I was listening very well.
Let me go to the one of Azuka. Madam, your question that disciplinary action for younger people and so on, the channels are there. You know, you have junior staff committee, you have senior staff committee, and then you also have senior management. Okay? And then after that, if they are still not satisfied, you can write to the office of the head of the civil service of the Federation. I happen to belong to all of those committees up to the senior management council of the service when I was there. And unlike in the days when we used to see permanent secretaries on the corridor and you were on, these days people are even bolder. So you should not be afraid to talk about their issue. The one about God help us policy protects and so on. In reality, that's actually where I am, shall I say, disappointed in public servants. It's like you are waiting for other people to now fight your cause. I said, you know, there, you can just Google Goke Adegoroye, Guardian or Daily Trust. You will see the things that I wrote about the issues happening in the last, that the papers carried in the last 2 weeks. Even today, they still carried one on the case of the ASU that said they cannot be on the IPPS. Okay? I mean, I don't want to be a fighter for everybody. Not that I need to be paid. I'm not being paid for it. But the fight will make meaning when those who are fighting for also can speak out. All of the cases you say, oh, God, we are just helpless. We cannot talk. You can talk. You have what we used to call Senior Civil Servants Association. You leave your fight for the junior ones that they say they're in NUC, TUC, and you yourself, you are not talking. Bring up the issues. Let me tell you, you're talking about the case of not being promoted. Did you remember the case of the deputy directors that were stagnated, that were not promoted, who took government to court in the last 3-4 years? We were one of those that resolved it. Myself and a few of my colleagues intervened on their behalf, meeting the head of the civil service, and also meeting them to tell them to withdraw, and ensuring that we told the head of service how to create the vacancy that will absorb all of them. Okay? I mean, remember, I used to be in reform. So I was able to give all the avenues that would create the vacancy to absorb all of them. And since many of them were actually retiring anyway, and we were able to take all of those. Remember, the case had gone to even the VP. The VP had intervened. Falana was their lawyer. Eventually, we did it, and they were all given their due. And then, the opening now came where which they did. So the key thing I'm trying to say is that you cannot be the same one that we expect to speak truth to power, and you cannot speak on your own. Yes, you don't need to carry placard, but form your own team, write with simple language. You know the way we used to write to our bosses, very civil language. We want them to know. Take a second look at this. You know that maybe it's an oversight, and when you do that, then you copy people like us, the Council of Retired Federal Permanent Secretary, copy Public Complaints Commission, okay, and you had one this morning, which I was very impressed with. The National Assembly. They take some of these cases, and before you know it, even if it were done the wrong way, then they will speak to it. But like I said, when policies come from above, it's a little bit, too difficult. So you have to make them, and that's why people like me are speaking up. When I see that they're extending the tenure of some retired people, I tell them what you can do for those ones, the appointment you can give them. Senior special assistant to the president, they still become useful. But then let those who are next in line from their own state. If people from a state did not vacate, I will not become permanent secretary. So these are the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Put your hands together for him. That's a wonderful answer. And you did, okay, no problem.
Yeah, thank you very much. First question, because of the hazardous work of investigators, is there any insurance policy? No, there's no insurance policy. The public sector servants are covered by the Pensions Act and the Workmen Compensation Act. So those two acts take care reasonably without them paying insurance, premiums. When unfortunate things happen, both the Pensions Act and the Workmen Compensation Act takes care of those consequences. The second issue is whether there was sanction for the hotel. Yes, Doctor, I did say that they pleaded that they had just taken over management of the place. And so in addition to refunding the money, they were required to submit an apology for their conduct, which they did promptly. And they were the ones requesting that when they put the hotel in good shape, if I could come and inspect. So they showed sufficient remorse. And the sanctions are applied as the facts of the case disclosed. And I was satisfied that truly they were not the managers previously. And therefore the sanction of an apology letter was sufficient for me at that time. And since then they have been working well. Now, the other issue of the lady who asked a question about, let me also say that in addition to what Dr. Dogore has said, there are provisions. For instance, we recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the pro bono lawyers who prosecute for free. So if you have difficult issues, you come to us. If we discover that there are cases that people have been in transition that need to be prosecuted, I will let you have a lawyer for free, and you can get yourself prosecuted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Will you need the stage? Because Savicom, you can see everything is on your head. If you may need the stage, come up here. Thank you, Savicom CEO.
The first question, I want to appreciate all the questions. And the first one says, are there sanctions? And I will answer this way with an example. For now, we engage and insist that the provisions around the failure For instance, in the civil service, for instance, in the practice of a doctor, I'm going to use examples. We insist and go to the right regulations that they should implement the provisions in that particular session. I'll give an example of a doctor who is supposed to be on duty, and he left his duty post and went to a wedding. And so we engaged with the association and he was sanctioned. Another one happened in Niger State. Wrong practice by a doctor. He was sanctioned and his license was seized for wrong diagnosis and prescription. And so for Servicom, what we do, every service has its own disciplinary actions. What we insist is that such provisions should be called up and implemented, and we follow it through to the end. And taking that further, when we have cases of impunity, and I'll give an example of our current experience with some MDAs, e.g. customs, we take it higher and get to the office of the VP. There's one currently being, we channeled to the PCC, and it's ongoing, and we'll follow it through and track it to the end. And we publish our results. That is what we do for now. And then okay, that's the question of transcript. I want to thank you for that question. It's an issue that has been bothering especially universities. Delays, admissions are missed, and all of that. And then bribery and issues of corruption around sending transcript. What we have done, we have an active network of all universities. And so we engage the VCs. I was in University of Ibadan because the executive secretary had now said that he's going to establish universities at the federal. You have them already. He's going to establish Servicom desks in the federal universities, state universities, and the private universities. This would make it easier and also make it part of the process of actually accrediting universities. If they don't have their Servicom obligations properly fulfilled or provided for, he would now hold back the accreditation. And so taking it serious. So the fear of Servicom around the university process is the beginning of wisdom, because NUC in partnership with Servicom is activating and making it stronger. And so what we have done is to bring a template that tracks and reports timelines as promised by the university. So there's a bit of improvement there. But let me say that is work in process. Then for bribery, the officers are brought to book, and Servicom, the desk officers in the different universities report to quarterly to the improvements registered and recorded. So there's a bit of improvement in the process, and we have reports, regular reports, to back up this improvement that we are also tracking through the universities. Let me say that the highest body supervising the university has now keyed in fully state, federal, and private universities to establish Servicom so that it makes life easier for the universities, for the students, as well as even NUC that supervises them. Because when you talk about accreditation process being held back, you know what that means. In other words, you're threatening towards closing down their process. And so they quickly respond. So that is the collaboration, that's the partnership that Servicom is activating to have improvements registered around this process. But I would like to also know the university so that I can refer this matter, and then we also want to mystery shop. We have a method approved by federal to mystery shop such a process and to find out if exactly what we are expecting to see in terms of improvement. If it's not there, then we will also engage in an advocacy visit with the management of such a university, and we'll set traps. We have set traps and people have been dismissed. Example is Asokoro General Hospital. I'm sure you heard about it, where we had to bring in all of the 14 MDs of the different hospitals with the PEMSEC, and they were sanctioned. In fact, I got letters of threat that, from a mother of one of the doctors that wanted to sack the son. For me, the son, who is the doctor that defaulted, For me, I do my job just as he has said, and I put it in the public domain. And so let Nigerians also lend their voice, and let us open up the processes, let us open up the system. And it's in pushing forward that Servicom has been given in OGP, Open Government Partnership. Servicom has, the service improvement has been given a thematic area endorsed by Mr. President. So we're coming up with a framework that will begin to open the systems of service delivery processes and systems. There, in the nearest future, we might not have a place to hide anymore. And so the issue of NHIS, I want to say that the act that established NHIS has clearly spelled out their boundaries and their limits. And in the guideline, because we have evaluated NHIS, they have also spelled out areas that they cover. And so I will encourage a bit of reading and a bit of going backwards to study what they can take care of. Because one of the key things that is working against its NHIS is for them to open up and tell Nigerians in concrete terms what they can get and how they can get it, and the limitations and the areas of operation. There is a gap, and that's why we have a lot of these complaints. For instance, they have drugs that are not covered by this insurance scheme. And it's in their guideline, it's in their manual. But because we are not engaging properly, we don't have adequate information. And because also the service takers are not aware. And so we expect more than NHIS can provide. For instance, I'll come to that. Issues of surgeries, there are some that are covered, and there are some they must get clearance before they can operate. And so there's a process, it's also in their manual, a guide as to the levels of clearance they must obtain before you can earn or have that treatment. And so that is also there. So going forward, what we are working with NHIS to do, especially their new management, is to provide adequate information, including to the illiterates, so that they know and we are all better guided in terms. So we can also hold them more accountable, because as it were, there are some areas where we cannot truly hold them, I'm almost done, accountable, especially on NH. It's working. They have a new head, and we're engaging to ensure that all the gray areas are properly opened up and they shed more light around it. And so complaints limitation. Do you have powers to prosecute? I think I've indirectly answered that question. We insist that you invoke the relevant laws and the act, and then we track it until we have full redressal. Thank you very much.
Put your hands together for Lady Nena Akajemeli, the Servicom CEO. Like I said, all this thing we talk about is about service, and she's here herself, a stakeholder, to address critical issues that has bothered or worried civil servants, private sectors, students, and all that. We thank you so much for coming. Thank you for the answers you provided. The three resource persons, Dr. Goke Adegoroye, Lady Nena Akajemeli, and Chief Willie Wanga Ibawa, we continue to thank you for helping us out at this session and providing solutions to the problems. The OON says, God will help us. So I believe they are putting all these things together. Nigeria is a godly nation. Nations surrounding Nigeria, both Africa and wherever. The fact that you are here, God will also help you in solving some of these problems where your hands cannot reach. We thank you very much. This is the end of the session 4. We are moving into 5. The theme here is strengthening grievance handling in universities and higher educational institutions. Speakers, I have 2 who will number 1 is the Ombudsman of Sierra Leone, Leon Jenkins Johnson Esquire, the Ombudsman of Sierra Leone. Put your hands together for him as he comes. Leon Jenkins Johnson Esquire, So I'm sure he's a lawyer. You will listen to come up, my dear. You look so young. Are you the...
I turned 65 yesterday.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
By the way, thank you very much for the wonderful surprise yesterday. This is like when you're coming in, when you're in school and you're waiting for the last period. And there's that lecture that you don't want to see because you want to go home and you're tired. But in any case, let me try to make some progress. Our host, the Nigerian Ombudsman, Honorable Chili Wanga Igbawa, Esquire, I wish to thank you very much for this invitation extended to me to be able to speak at this event on the topic handling of university student grievances, lessons of experience. I must also thank Professor Eni, even though he's not here, for his dexterity and enthusiasm to make this expo happen. I pray this continues biannually, if possible, in other countries. From the onset, let me say that handling student grievances is an area that has proved to be a challenge for ombudsmen right across the globe, and for Sierra Leone in particular, quite a very serious and urgent matter. In Sierra Leone, by virtue of subsection 2 of section 146 of the Constitution of Sierra Leone, Act number 6 of 1991, and the Ombudsman Act number 2 of 1997, the functions of the Ombudsman are set out so as to include the investigation of any action taken or omitted to be taken by or on behalf of A, any department or ministry of government, any statutory corporation or institution of higher learning or education set up entirely or partly out of public funds, and C, any member of the public service. Being an action taken or omitted to be taken in the exercise of the administrative functions of that department, ministry, statutory corporation, institution, or person. I guess this is pretty much similar to Nigeria and Malawi, if you like. I know everybody's tired, so I'm just quickly going to run through this, and before I get you bored, because this was going to be a little bit more academic. So the Sierra Leone experience. In Sierra Leone, there's only one ombudsman who covers a total of about 7.5 million people, and he covers also ministries, departments, and agencies, and of course, institutions of higher learning and universities. When I took up office a little over 10 months ago, I was shocked to find out that none of the universities and institutions of higher learning had any grievance handling mechanisms in place. And they would only set up ad hoc bodies as and when necessary, usually consisting of colleagues of the alleged perpetrators themselves. I say I was shocked because I myself, I did my university education in the United Kingdom, so I wasn't very much aware of what was happening at home. I found that there was systemic and endemic bullying, discrimination, and violations of students' rights. The result of this being that students would rather suffer in silence than risk complaining and incurring the wrath further of the perpetrators of the injustices that they suffer. At the country's law school, students are not shown their grades when they fail modules, and are only told that they have a reference in a certain subject without the benefit of having to see their grades. Sometimes it can be very difficult to surmount grievances when the source of the grievance is from quarters that are least expected. For instance, after the bar final examinations in 2018, there is a regulation in place set up by the Council of Legal Education in Sierra Leone, which provides that students who fail to pass the bar exams after 3 attempts will not be allowed a fourth chance until after 3 years. We were faced with a situation wherein the Chief Justice, who is the chairman of council and who has only 1 vote in council, allegedly intervened unlawfully in the examination and ordered that certain students who had exceeded their chances should be allowed to retake the exams on the grounds that he had been informed that the same latitude had been given to other students in the past. This, as you can imagine, has caused a whole lot of commotion between the present and past students, including myself, and opened a can of worms, and as a consequence, the Office of the Ombudsman is now investigating complaints from students against the Chief Justice and administrators of the law school. I have since learned that in my absence, whilst being here, a criminal investigation has been launched by the Criminal Investigation Department of the Sierra Leone Police on the same issue. Lecturers in the country's top universities are a law unto themselves, and there are frequent and relentless complaints of lecturers demanding sex for grades, for example, a situation which we have given the phrase sextortion. What you all saw in the recent BBC documentary relating to universities in Ghana and Nigeria, I submit without an iota of doubt, is also true for Sierra Leone. These cases, in any event, are very difficult to investigate, usually because of lack of direct evidence. As a short-term measure, I have been on a massive sensitization drive in these institutions, not only to understand what obtains, but also to tell the students that the Ombudsman will take their complaints when it is expedient for him to so do. So for the office of the Ombudsman in Sierra Leone, this topic on this occasion could not have come at a better time, and I wish we had more time to go into depth because a lot of people are suffering as a result. I did hear complaints again about, I think it was from Savicom, showing that the largest complaints they're getting are from universities. So it is still alive. So let me quickly run through this. So what then is grievance? In Black's Law Dictionary 8th edition, grievance is defined as an injury, injustice, or wrong that give grounds for a complaint. There is a subtle difference between complaints and grievance, and the University of Melbourne in 2015 made this distinction. A complaint is a problem or concern raised by a student who considers him or herself to have been wrong because of an action, decision, or omission within the control or responsibility of the university, whilst a grievance is a matter to be investigated according to formal grievance processes. This includes complaints which are not able to be resolved through informal processes or mediation, and matters relating to allegations of misconduct where disciplinary action against a student or staff member may be an outcome of the investigation. So what are some of the usual grounds for complaints? A student being affected by a decision made without sufficient consideration of facts, evidence, or circumstances, a penalty applied to the student being unduly harsh or inappropriate, a student being affected by a failure to adhere to appropriate or relevant published university policies and procedures, a student being affected by improper or negligent conduct by another student or staff member, a student being affected by unfair treatment, prejudice, or bias, sextortion, which I mentioned earlier ago, amongst others. So what are the ways we can prevent grievances? One of the easiest ways to prevent grievances, I submit, is to have a well-designed syllabus that is clear to the students and that can be referenced if there is a complaint. Lecturers should ensure that they review syllabuses regularly and to keep the students updated with such reviews. Syllabuses and policies should be clear and unambiguous and should cater for what would happen in cases of family emergencies, for example, medical, etc., so that neither party will take advantage of such unambiguities, or ambiguities, I beg your pardon. So what are the concerns usually students have when they are faced with these complaints? They want to know where they should complain, whether it will be safe for them to complain, because we know what the repercussions are most of the time. When you complain, you come back to the institution, and then sometimes it feels like it's a syndicate amongst those who are the perpetrators. Would they have protection? Would it be fair? Can they complain anonymously? And will it be dealt with on campus or at the Ombudsman's office? And will it be better in a university tribunal court with an ombudsman present? These are some of the concerns we get. So how do you handle a grievance? While setting clear policies helps prevent students from taking advantage of ambiguous situations, it is also important to treat students with respect and understanding, listen to their concerns, and help them find workable solutions. Students in precarious situations feel stressed and upset and will not respond well to being treated coolly. Be patient with students, and even if a problem is due to your own actions, help them understand their options and let them know that you will help to the best of your abilities while still being fair to other students. Try to resolve the issue with your lecturer if you're a student before it goes out of hands. For the lecturer, you should try to avoid making hasty decisions. Once a student complains, try to understand their complaint and discuss it with experienced colleagues before coming out with a decision. At all times, remember to be careful in your interactions with the student. Do not let your reaction become the problem. If skeptical about a student complaint, do not lose your cool or be rude to the student. Such behavior is not only unprofessional, but it may provide credibility to claims of unfair treatment. Treat the student respectfully and behave in a dignified and restrained manner throughout the entire process. Create a safe space for them to complain. Speak to relevant authorities and ask them relevant questions. Try to mediate or negotiate. Investigate and ask for all relevant documents. The reality is usually better in my submission if grievances are well provided for and handled within institutions of higher learning to avoid the need for the Ombudsman to intervene. The Ombudsman, if possible, should be an absolute last resort in these very delicate and intricate situations. I am also of the view that more training is needed in this area for those of us who handle such grievances for us to better serve students and the community at large. So I'm cutting this short. So ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought it was going to take time, but it took me unawares, but no problem. That's what you expect from the jet age. I asked him his age. He said he turned 65 yesterday, and you could just see him exhibiting that. We thank you very much. Put your hands together for him. Leon Jenkins Johnson, Esquire. He trained in the UK. And looking at the name, you know where he was coming from. I knew where you were coming from. Thank you very much. Don't bow and go yet. Yes, because questions will still come to you. How is the students are here, but the various representatives of various areas will carry it down and continue to encourage the students. I call the next speaker. Next speaker will be speaking on the case of better handling of student grievances in universities and higher institutions. That is Professor Uketo Moti, Department of Public Administration, University of Abuja, but he will be represented by Dr. Hassan Said. You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, my respected audience, good evening all. As the chairman rightly observed, the name is Dr. Hassan Said. I stand in for Professor Uketo Gabriel Moti. He is not with us here for some cogent reasons, but I will try my best to deliver the message he has asked me to deliver. The title of the paper is Strengthening the Handling of Student Grievances in the Nigerian Universities and Higher Institutions. He started with the introduction, even though some of the key issues have been taken from the definition of what grievance is, what complaint is, and other issues, so I don't think I need to go into that. The last speaker actually tried to make some clarification on what grievance is. Professor gave this paper a kind of advisory paper, in the sense that we all know that today we hardly find an institution or a standard procedure of handling grievance in the Nigerian university. I think what we know in existence is only the what do you call it, Madam due process and Savicom, so to say. We have that, only that I want to believe that it's not properly utilized. But he tried to suggest that if we have an ombudsman mechanism in the Nigerian university, there are some incentive that will come in building the image of the university, which include, one, if we have a standard procedure of handling grievances for students and also staff, the university will be able to evaluate and improve programs and services it provides to the public. Because from the complaints received, we'll be able to know the stand of the university and where it ought to be. Secondly, among the incentive of having is a well-established procedure is informed decisions will be taken on the service delivery of the university. Third, it will provide an appropriate remedy for complaint or complainant. Whoever makes complaints, once you have this system well standardized, the complaint will be properly handled and also maintain good relationship with the public and other stakeholders, because I want to believe we have issues of perception today on the university and the relationship between the lecturers and the student. I want to seek protection. I know some questions will come about the cool room that happened in Lagos recently and the BBC documentary. He said proper complaint management is a good business, because once you have a proper complaint management system in place, it means the relationship between the university and its stakeholder and the public will be strengthened and also mean a good business in whole. So there are processes he has identified in the paper. One of them is to have a very good commitment from the staff and the management, and also monitoring information accessory. So what Prof is trying to say in a nutshell, since we don't have to go through all, is number one, definitely there are complaints amongst students once you have engagement between one or two people. But having an established procedure for collecting information, processing them, and also determining cases of grievances and handling them properly will create a very positive and build image of the university and also provide a framework for better consultation and also interaction among the stakeholders. So the essential information about complaint system that needs to be clearly conveyed include, number one, how and where a complaint can be submitted, including if a complaint form is available. What he's trying to say here is, definitely there must be a standardized procedure for receiving complaints in the university system. So a kind of advice of having an enshrined or entrenched ombudsman system is, one, to have the nature of information to be received, how you are going to deliver the message, the complaint. Then the second one is the university timeliness, standardized for handling complaints. It means for you to bring a complaint, you must know the time you are supposed to submit and provide all the information. All these things should be entrenched in the procedure. Also, limitation on the university jurisdiction on handling complaint. One of the speakers here said, in any organization, there are laws that establish such organization, defining its power and its also limitations. So university system complains that student needs to bring before the university should be spelled out and also identify the limitation. Because if somebody has not paid school fees, for instance, as a result of some problem in the family, should not bring that to the university. So there should be a limitation on the nature of complaint to be. So a cross reference in the university policy and the protected public interest discussion. So all these are guide on the nature of complaint to be provided. So he also gave us operating the complaint management system, meaning because all the argument is we should know that definitely when 2 or 3 people interact in a particular instance, there must be complaint and grievances. So for university to handle this, there should be a proper channel of handling such complaint. And having that, how do you operate? He says, number one, Understanding should make people welcome what is trying to put it, because there are some typographical error when I notice. The issue is the university system should provide avenue that is welcome complaint from the public, and everybody belongs to the community. Once you are within the community, you have all the liberty, all the processes are there for you to lay complaint once your rights are infringed upon. And to do that, he said, the nature of complaint or disclosure should also be clear. For example, if it is about policies or procedure and practices about or the conduct of individual, what he's trying to say here is the complaint to be laid before the university, the student or the complainant should know that the nature of complaint should be clearly classified. That is, if the complaint borders within the policy and procedure or practices of the management, or secondly, the seriousness of the allegation and the possible outcome should also be defined. Then the potential impact and or risk to the complainant or information or those who are going to provide witness on this. So what Prof is trying to see is, one, the nature of the complaint should be clearly outlined. Second, the complainant should know that he is free to lay such complaint, and also, if there's need for evidence or witness for someone to come and pay, then all these risks should also be clearly, so that the witness will also be protected from any risk. So integrating complaint handling with the university core activities. Prof said here that when university has to establish a complaint receiving or grievance unit, they should integrate, try to marry it with the core activities of the university, because once an investigation is to be carried out, there will be vacuum, definitely. And that vacuum, the investigative officer who is supposed to be there may likely not to be there. So integrating the powers given to the body with the core activities of the university is paramount. That is to say, the investigation unit activity will not jeopardize the core mandate or activities of the university. So, and this integration will be one, integrating within the university can benefit a university in one, the complaint, sorry, I don't know whether, the complaint unit should be recognized as separate unit or branch that is shown on the organizational chart. What is trying to, how to integrate complaint unit within the university system is that it is a body that is established within the chart. Is known that this is a complaint unit. It operates some kind of independence that anybody who goes there with a complaint will be properly listened to and taken care of without interrupting the core activities of the university. And secondly is the complaint unit should be headed by or reported directly to a senior manager, meaning a unit should be there and headed by a senior management staff who has the capacity and skill to listen and also dispense a complaint. The complaint unit should be headed by a report on complaint or complainant. Trend should be a regular, I don't know if I have to use some light. Sorry for that. Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. Sorry, let me take that again. Integrating with the university, one, the complaint unit should be recognized as a separate unit or branch that's shown on the organizational chart. Secondly, the complaint unit should be headed or report directly to a senior manager. Report on complaint and complaint trend should be a regular agenda for executive management meeting. How complaints have been handled and the finalized should be a performance measure for university. What he's trying to say is, number one, This unit should be headed by a capable hand, and there should be a kind of monitoring and evaluation, because if an individual is given power to decide and also take complaints from students, there will be chances of abuse. So there should be a higher management body who oversees the activities of this complaint unit. So providing training is one of them. The second item is, having established the unit, there should be a regular training for those who handle the complaint. That is, the complaint officer should receive requisite training on how to aggregate complaint and also take investigation. Training of complaint handling staff must occur at a middle stage in many ways. Number one, when first assigned to a position that involves complaint handling, a staff member must be trained in the university's complaint policy and procedure. This should be supplemented by training that deals with special challenges that arise in complaint handling. Second, it's also important to educate complaint staff about all aspects of businesses of their university. This training should focus on university programs and services that affect students and members of the public and could give rise to complaint. Those programs and services will change and develop over time, and it is important that complaint staff are made aware of those changes. So, in a nutshell, there are some key issues here is that in training, the staff should have a clear understanding that administrative investigations are inquisitorial, meaning those involved in that are inquisitive and want to get into the fact. It is a fact-finding processes, and that investigators are not prosecutors on their own, and that is why we say there should be a monitoring and evaluation. Then they are acting on adversarial environment. All relevant staff should have a clear understanding of the principles and procedural fairness and how they apply to investigation under the applicable provision. So establishing a complaint center, one, that the university need to have a complaint center which will cover these activities. Number one, maintaining a complaint database, recording details of all complaints and their determination in their center database, registering all staff designated to receive complaint and their level of expertise, conducting and commissioning relevant training for all staff involved in complaint handling, maintaining a database of qualified or experienced investigators, among other key issues to be covered in the complaint unit. And this should be at the portal and accessible by the public. And taking complaint and grievances. He tried to make some clarification about such complaint. One, there is dispute. Dispute will come between the management and the staff, sorry. Yeah, so let me. Dispute may arise as a result of a conflict of interest, for instance, in the assessment or exclusion, discrimination of causes, lack of procedural fairness, or grievances about bullying. Secondly, mismanagement. This covers such things as unreasonable decisions, inconsistent application of policy, denial of procedural fairness, failure to provide right, failing to consider relevant matters, among others. And the third one is misconduct, which deals with ethical issues. This includes ethical and integrity issues such as plagiarism, unethical or biased, making conflict or interest, fraud, bribery, dishonesty, improper favoritism, discrimination, and harassment. I know people will be more on the issue of ethics, harassment, and bribery. The last speaker also made mention of that, and this is all over. So how can a complaint be made? How can a complaint be made? He said, one, university should review their process from time to time, including consulting with potential complaint and about their preferred method of contact and the improvement that will help them to access the complaint process more essentially. Even if complainants tend to use one complaint option more often than other, all contact options should be properly maintained. What he's trying to see is there should be platform for complaint. There should be a designated call line that students can always make reference to when they are aggrieved. They can contact them through email, through phone call, or even physical contact if they so wish. So all options should be available and be adequate for students to utilize. So what can be complained about? We have said that number one, academic misconduct, corrupt conduct, maladministration, racist, homophobic, sexist, or other discriminatory conduct. So in a nutshell, previous papers that we have had all are in this line, except the domains are different. The gentleman from Sierra Leone also painted the same scenario. My sister here who presented on the Servicom also painted the same scenario. It's all over. Once you have 2 or 3 people contacting regularly on a daily basis, definitely there must be grievances and there must be a way to address them. So what we have today in the university system, this is off the paper, what we have today in the university system is a committee system that investigates grievances and complaints of students. There's actually no standardized mechanism in place where students can go and lay complaints, and those complaints will be taken care of. So what we have is just Servicom is another thing to have it, is yet another thing to see it being functional or effective. But this paper, by and large, from my understanding, is trying to advise the university or those who are here, the body, the ombudsman body, to at least entrench this principle to the university where students and all other aggrieved persons can access, lay complaint, and those complaints be taken care of. I'm sorry for the hiccups. You know, once you are not the originator of a paper, it comes with little challenges at times. But the message is there that the university is suffering from a lot of complaints, definitely, although there's this say that if a snake bites you, it's not a news, but if you bite a snake, it becomes a news. So what we have generally today, the cold room issue, the BBC documentary, these are issues that border on conduct, value system, the moral conduct, I want to say, the integrity of individual, but they are very difficult because of evidence to actually find out. So it's border on ethics and the moral conduct of individual. It's a matter of discipline. But we'll come to that, God willing, and gradually we'll be able to address them. So it's a two-way traffic. The lecturers have theirs, and the students also have their own. Thank you very much.
Another hand of applause, please, for Dr. Hassan Said. He's presenting Professor Oketo. Immediately I saw the name Professor, I thought there was going to be a handout, 1. 2, after lecture, he was going to give an assignment or a homework. But I was I was scared. I was watching him, but he made it brief. Maybe he took leave from the Sierra Leone Ombudsman. We thank you so much, Dr. Hassan Said, upon the fact you were given a very short notice, but you delivered the message. I'm sure the listeners are here. You heard all they said, and we made it. Looking at the time, we made it. I thank all the resource persons. They kept to time. And then the question time now. This is a very sensitive area and a popular area, university sector, where if you open up that one, it's a can of worms. People, you just complain, it's here and there, from classroom to student affairs to academic affairs to everywhere. But the good news is that there's a solution or a preferred solution. So I want to have questions. Question time now. They are sitting here. Questions. I'll give you numbers. Number 1. Next person. Next person. Okay, bring them. Number 2. Number 2. Any other person? Okay. Give the microphone to the first person. Tell us your name, your question. If you are directing to a particular person, you tell them. Otherwise, 2 of them will answer if they have solution to your question.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity. My name is Dr. Roger Corantin, Advisor Head, Commonwealth Secretariat, Public Sector Governance. And I've been a lecturer at University of Birmingham for about over 10 years before I joined Commonwealth. And of course, I also taught in University of Ghana, Legon. So I understand the issues. But my point or question would be, particularly from Leon, from Sir Leon and the doctor. You see, when it gets to university issues like this, it's very sensitive, as you said, because of lack of evidence. But we are also here that we have seen that BBC managed to project this. They came from all the way from UK and exposed our universities in Africa, which is Ghana and Nigeria. The problem I had, as I know, if we're a student in the university and you make a complaint, and the two major complaints confront universities all over, particularly in Africa, sex for marks and admissions. For admissions, the ombudsman can easily investigate and know what's going on. But when it gets to the sex for marks, it's very difficult because it will be the word of the complainant against the lecturer. And where is the evidence? And that's where my advice for the ombudsman is to be innovative. You should be innovative and find a way, think around outside the box and find a way to get this evidence. Like the BBC showed us. What they did was that they didn't use the student themselves, because if we use a student complaint, what is going to happen is that that student is going to be blacklisted, no matter what the protection you give, because fellow lecturers are going to rain in on her. So what you do is that you can use an outsider, as they did, to come in as a researcher or as exchange program student who will not come from the university, but is there for a period. And that will be collecting, he or she can then relate with these lecturers, particularly those that, if you put your ears and eyes on the ground, some names will be coming up from the universities, which will not be formalized, but you can hear that this particular lecturer is demanding sex for marks. And therefore, you target them, send these pseudo researchers or pseudo exchange students to them. And then you get the evidence, as the BBC do, because we are here and BBC has come to expose this. But you and I know that for all these years in our continent, it is common. And what are our ombudsman doing about this? So what I'm saying is that please think outside the box. That your procedures, yes, but it is sometimes it becomes outmoded because the issues would demand certain new approaches. And therefore, that is my comment. It may not be a question, but it's a comment.
That's what I'm about to round up. I want to say that you have just answered an unasked question. Okay, take the microphone to number 2. Or do you have something to add to it? Hold on. Did you have something to add to that? Yeah, please. Okay. Give him the microphone, the slightly soft one.
One does not particularly want to. Yes, so you have to be very careful as well, because sometimes, again, not making a case for lecturers, but some students are mischievous themselves, and maybe they don't meet up to the grades. But I think by and large, we all agree that it is happening in universities, and that is why a gathering like this is important. I rushed at the opportunity because clearly we're going down that road now. And we saw what the BBC did in some instances. If we're able to have students come up with messages, recordings, and videos, I think the students themselves have watched the documentary, so it's open to them. Because if you bring sufficient evidence, it's very easy for an ombudsman to handle. But I can assure you that speaking for myself, I am very alive to the issues, and as soon as I am able to act on any issue, I will.
Thank you. Professor Dr. Hassan, take the microphone to you.
Yes, proactiveness in the sense that we go on motion investigations and so on. Those are things that we do every so often.
Thank you. As the Ombudsman of Sierra Leone.
Yeah, thank you. Let me also take it from one of the comments he made. You see, there's issue of perception, public perception about what happens in the university. For us, the lecturers, we are placed at the position of advantage because we decide, we mark. So to that end, it is possible to say, yes, you take advantage of student who wants to pass, but in most cases, we also have issues where students are harassing the lecturer. It happened to me. I've been in the university for more than 15 years now. It happened when, at the time, a student assessment was before me, and I didn't see the student performing well. So I said, let me place a call. I called the class rep. Do you know this student? He said, yes. Please give me the number. Let me call the student. I called, where are you? I have not seen you participating in one of the assessments. No, I'm traveling with my mom. The mother was there, and I closed the matter. I said, when you return, please see me. That's all. So after 2 years, I think it happened when she was in 200. At her final year, incidentally, she failed one of my courses. So she now went and told the mother that it is that lecturer that called me when we were traveling that failed me. Before you know it, she had gone to meet one of the professors in the university, reported the case to the person, and he came harassing us. And the National Assembly have said, sex marks, blah, 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 blah. So they called my attention. I said, okay, I think this thing will not just end here. Let's call the university community. Let's investigate the matter. So the student was summoned. Did he call you to say, meet me in a hotel? She said, no. Did he say, I love you? She said, no. What did he say? He only say, meet me in the... When was then? 2 years back. And she's reporting on the case that just happened at that time. So you can see the kind of perception. The mother took it as a way of saying, since I called her to come, she refused to come, so I failed her deliberately. I'm not saying it does happen. There are cases like this. Possibility is now taken as a general that it must be that way. If a student fails and you have anything to do with them, then you are now victimized. So the issue I want to say is definitely things like this happen, but it borders on ethics and also moral value. You understand? It's a two-way. I have seen a student who called me that I have been calling you. What I need from you is just to have sex with you. The phone fell down from my hand immediately because I was shocked. How can a student call me to tell me that all she needs from me is just to have sex? I say, okay. So if I did that now, she may take and go and report to the public that this is what I'm doing. So I dare not complain. Who do I complain such to?
To this, complain to that department you told us here.
So it happens. So we need the presence of ombudsman so that the lecturer also can be protected from this kind of harassment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hassan. Take the microphone to number 2. Who was the number 2? Okay. And that's the last. We have a few minutes to hand over to the coordinator to give us the final announcement.
Thank you very much. My name is Alhaji Hussein Abubakar Age, former president of NANS.
NANS?
Yes, the National Association of Nigerian Students.
We are welcome.
And the president of the Northern Youth Council of Nigeria, a civil society organization. When we talk about education, the total education in Nigeria with Africa needs total transformation. Because if you look at our educational system, we don't know if somebody outside or inside is intimidating the educational system. You will find out that in a given situation, let me make a reference with Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto State. We have so many students that are good, very good. We go to classes, we read our handouts, we attend our lectures, but at the end of the day, you see that when we write exams, we are going to leave the school, not with the grades that we work for. At the end of the day, they'll give you pass, third class, or they'll give you a certificate of attendance. So what we are saying here is that the lecturers in question, the management system of the institutions, that are meant to help the African student to grow, to be productive to the nation, end up intimidating the system. So many of us have left the systems now. We are politicians, but we are still fighting the same menace that we left in the system. So what we are saying is that from this expo, we want you people to help those that are back in school. The system of education of Nigeria and Africa need to grow to a greater height by looking at the educational environment and the grades of students. It is not encouraging at all. So you need to help us to do this. If things are done, issue of advocacy, political rallies, and the rest will not take place. Because sometimes what leads to all this advocacy are students that are intimidated in their high institution. When they leave the society, they'll form civil society organization and they'll start harassing the government. They are not doing it because that is what they want to do. But they find themselves in a system whereby somebody do not give them courage before they left the system. And they are seeing that their other counterparts from outside the country have all the basic necessity that takes for one to say, yes, I've graduated, I have a good working environment. So some of these things are not there. So our own complaint is that we should look at the menace in the system and find a way to correct it.
Thank you. Put your hands together for the former president of NANS. He's a critical stakeholder in the university system. I'm glad that NANS still have, even the former, they still meet. I have attended one of their functions here in Sheraton, I think 2013 or so, where we are reading the chronicles, and almost all of you are still alive because they almost stood up. Various years, we are all there. So I believe the link will trickle down to the students, and then you carry the message along to them. How I wish the students were even invited on this, but it's an ombuds function anyway. At this point, I want to congratulate those who, especially the resource persons, who made it to be present here to deliver their speeches. 3 hours were given to us, but by the grace of God, we started late, but we were able to fix it in 2 hours. It's almost time, and before I close this session, I'm going to call the host ombudsman, the Chief Commissioner, Chief Willie Ibawa for Public Complaints Commission, Nigeria, to come and give us the final announcements and the venue for next program, because this is not the end. We end this one to continue elsewhere. Thank you, Chief Commissioner. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. That was a good one. Honorable Sam Ben Nwosu is the Federal Commissioner in charge of Anambra State of the Nigerian Ombudsman Institution. Now, for those who are not Nigerians, the last speaker introduced himself as former president of NANS. NANS means National Association of Nigerian Students. That is the acronym for National Association of Nigerian Students. So it's a former student leader. And so you heard he was speaking from information and knowledge. Let me at this point most sincerely thank all resource persons who committed their time, who traveled from far and near to make this expo a success. I'm sure that it has been a worthwhile time for all of us. And like he says, everything that has a beginning must have an end. We are gradually closing in to the end of the occasion. But maybe just to let you know that I think the exhibition is still on. If you have not been there before, on your way out, you can just peep in there and see what has been exhibited. And yesterday, there was a film, a pictorial show of women ombudsmen. We started, but due to time, we got it short. It was still playing at the exhibition center. You can't pass there. If it's still playing, you can still have an opportunity to see those other women that we could not project yesterday. After here, the Special talks will end with this one. This is the last one we're having. And the only thing that remains is a few minutes of the exhibition that are on, which you can take advantage of. And then after that, at 7 o'clock, we're here for the gala night. If you go outside, you'll see that the hotel is already arranging the manner in which the gala night is going to hold. So that will be the last event for the evening. The gala night will have traditional dances there. There will be some chops. There will also be music by the police band. And we'll just relax there. And then we'll go home to rest. And for those who will be traveling tomorrow, or subsequently, I wish to say that we wish you a very safe journey back to your various countries. I don't know whether our friends from Cameroon are traveling by road. Well, I share, my constituency shares border with Cameroon, so we'll go to market in Cameroon, and they also come to markets on our side. We don't recognize that border. To us, it's not a border. So I'm from there, and that's why I know I'm the border with the Cameroon. We just go to their markets, and they also come over. The old women don't recognize the border at all. So that's why I say whether they're going by road. But I know they flew in, they'll be flying away, but we're grateful to have you, and the ombudsmen from the various countries, and the delegations from all across the globe. It's been a big, big occasion for all of us. It is not easy to get together delegations from 58 countries of the world and 5 continents. It doesn't happen all the time. And I think we should be proud to be a part of this occasion. We look forward, like some speakers have said, including the Ombudsman of Sierra Leone, that this occasion should not be the last one. It is the first, but it should continue. Perhaps by another thing that consideration will be given to how frequently this can hold. I'm sure we have all had some good time, both in the exhibition, the special lectures, and the interactions. I think the missing link, which I think in subsequent occasions we will look at, is that there was no time for women to go for shopping. Okay, omission, and men too. So maybe next time we'll organize it in such a way that there's some little time allowed for people to go out the countryside. Even those who went for 12 places of interest yesterday, it was very formal. I'm not sure they could stop over and say, you want to stop over at the market to pick a thing or two. And of course, there should be some free time that people can go to the real world. This hotel environment is not the real world. There's some place you go and you know you are now truly in Nigeria. So we think we shall make amends with regards to those aspects that we have seen. First time, usually you have these cheating problems, but they are to teach you to make things better subsequently. So once again, I thank you very much. Pray that the Lord will grant you journey mercies back to your various destinations. Have a good night.